So guys, recently it just dawned on me that I've been reading books the wrong way, and you probably have been too. So I was thinking about this the other day as I was going through Russell Brunson's book, Expert Secrets, and I realized as I was reading this book that a lot of the stuff that's in that book, I didn't internalize. It seemed new to me. I remembered some parts of it, but I didn't remember all that. And then I realized that there's something going on here. And what I try to do a lot of times is I try to recheck my systems and to make sure that just because I'm doing something, am I doing it the right way? Am I doing the optimal thing? And what I came down to was the conclusion that I'm reading books the wrong way. And like I said, you probably are too. And so what I found out that I was doing was I was reading a large volume of books instead of rereading the critical books. And this is an error that I should have known that I was making because so many people have talked about this. Even in Stoic philosophy, Seneca, in one of his letters, I distinctly remember him talking about the idea that, that you shouldn't be consuming all of this content. Instead, you should find one book that you reread over and over again, that you meditate on that knowledge, that you gain that wisdom instead of trying to go everywhere and try to learn everything and really to come up with your own philosophy. That's the second part of that. I realized I was making that mistake. So I was reading this large volume of books. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've been reading around 50 to 60, sometimes 70 books a year. A lot of that was because I was running and I was listening to audiobooks, which I highly recommend you do that. But I started to realize that a lot of the gains that I was making originally in personal development and personal growth were due to some of the first books I was reading because I read the best books first. I read books like Psycho-Cybernetics, Man's Search for Meaning, Think and Grow Rich, a ton of these kind of books that really shaped my viewpoint. And I came back to realize why were those books so impactful? And some of it was because of the books themselves. But what I realized was that I originally had it right. All right, I was more on track. I had this right idea that if I listened to a book or I read a book, that if it was good, if it was a high quality book, then I would do it again immediately. So for instance, Psycho-Cybernetics, I remember when I first listened to the audio version of that book, I immediately listened to the audio version a second time. And so I had sort of the right idea there, but I sort of lost it. I stopped doing that. And so what I realized as I was studying this Expert Secrets book, and I was gaining this huge benefit from it, is that in order to really gain the most from books, it's better to pick the best ones and to focus on those books, to reread those books, to really internalize those concepts. Now, again, this advice doesn't apply to just any book that you read. Reading a book that does not give you a lot of great insights, is not going to guide you in your business and your personal development multiple times, is not going to gain you much. But when you find one of those books that has a lot in it, that there's a lot to apply to your life, a lot of principles or practical steps, it makes sense to read that book more than one time. So I'm going to go back to my old strategy of saying that if I read a good book and it's good, I'm going to read it immediately a second time, and I'm going to cut down on the number of books that I'm reading and increase the number of books that I'm rereading. And I suggest that you do the same. I think you'll find a benefit from that. The second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start applying the concepts in the books more. I haven't really been much of a note taker, but I'm going to take what I'm reading and what I'm learning from a book, and I'm going to start applying that specifically in my life, specifically in my business, so I'm getting the most out of it. Because what I find myself doing is a lot of times when I'm listening to books or reading books is that I get all these great ideas and I think this is awesome, but I never go back and implement the things. But here's the thing I'm going to say too, that it doesn't mean that there's not a hybrid approach. And I think the hybrid approach is perhaps best. It doesn't mean that you can't listen to a large number of books, okay? It's just that you should make the most out of the books, good books you read. So for instance, you should still be reading a lot of different books. I think that it still makes sense to get a lot of perspectives, to have a large volume of books that you're reading, to be active on your Audible account. But I'm going to make my focus on the ones that are good, that I want to reread. So I'm still getting a broad scope of things because that's important to gain perspective. From reading probably 1,000 books, I've gained a huge amount of perspective. And I think I wouldn't want to leave that on the table and just have a narrow focus perspective. But I think a balance, and maybe that balance is about 50-50. Maybe about half the books that you should read should be new books and half of them should be old books. And that's how you should divide your reading time. Maybe it's 70-30, I don't know. I'm going to kind of figure that out and see what works. And I'll do some videos and talk about that. But one thing I think also to think about too, that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this, is that There's plenty of ways to success, but you just need one. And I've read so many business books. I've read so many books on fitness, on dating, on diet, on personal development, all these things. And they all present different systems or different ways to reach success, but you only need one. And that's something that is really important to realize, is that even though you might be missing out on all these other really good books, when you look at like books on personal development, a lot of them are really saying the same thing, or have different paths of the same thing. Though, like if you apply one thing and you really apply it to your life, you're going to be successful. For example, a business book. You read a business book on business strategy, on how to start your business. You could read 15 different ones of them on how to gain traffic and all these things and gain all these perspective. But a lot of times it's actually going to be a negative, because you're going to be confused and you don't have something to execute and iterate on. And so if you pick one book and you focus on that book, one plan, you're going to be successful. And that's what I started to realize. I have to kind of swallow my ego and swallow my pride a little bit and say, okay, yeah, I've been really successful in life. I've made a lot of money. I've had a lot of success in business. But there's people that are more successful than me. And they were able to achieve that just by focusing on this one technique in this book, on creating these perfect webinars. And so why am I rejecting that and saying I can do better when I'm clearly not doing better? I'm doing great, I'm doing good, I'm doing better than most. If I just focus on that one strategy and just hone in on that thing, then I'll be able to reach a high level of success just using that. So I think that's important to understand and realize, because we want to get information from all kinds of places, but we don't necessarily need it. Now, one thing also to wrap this up about books, if you are already a Bulldog Mindset member, I've already done some of the hard work for you filtering through books, because that's very important as well. In the Bulldog Mindset membership, there's a link down below if you want to join. If you haven't joined already, you can get in for $7 for the first month. There are book summaries and there's a book club. So I've picked the best books, which I've gotten from people. My process of picking books is that I need to have at least 3 recommendations before I would read that book. So I filtered that, and then I filtered that further based on the books that I recommend that have really helped me grow and transform my life. So if you go in there in the Bulldog Mindset membership, the entire price of the membership is worth the books alone, because that will save you years of time and effort. I don't know if you have the time to read 1,000 books like I did. Most people don't. So book summaries can be really helpful to do that. So anyway, if you're a member, go check it out. If you're not a member, click the link and join us, and you get access to, I think we have 151 videos in there. A new video comes out every week on fitness, on finance, on dating, social skills, and mindset. So if you like these kind of videos, you'll definitely like the content that's in there, because we go into a lot more in depth in there. So anyway, you're probably reading a book the wrong way. Like I said, I know I was. Let me know what you think about this. Leave a comment down below.